Why are we building New Atlantis? And what is the real reason behind all of this and building New Atlantis and gathering the people? We're your hosts, Anna Rocklina and
Jedi Hill. So you've heard me talk about how I'm looking to preserve humanity for the next 1,000 years.
Mhm.
And that's not really a joke.
Yes.
Yes, the idea of a tax-free society where you don't have all the government red tape and interference in your life, that is an awesome, nearly utopian vision, but it's not really a utopia because we know nowhere is ever perfect.
Absolutely, yes.
The real reason
Mhm.
is because of what's known as the grand precession cycle. It's a 26,000 year cycle,
Mhm.
and approximately every 13,000 years, the
Mhm.
sun, as it's going through the universe, goes through the galactic current sheet emanating from the black hole in the center of the galaxy. It gets a lot of dust. The sun will, it's punching through this wave of plasma and material. It gets covered in dust and then it shakes it off
Yeah.
like a dog coming out of the water in what's known as a micronova blast off the sun.
Mhm.
This, as we go through the galactic current sheet, it causes the polarity and poles to shift. Whether you have a partial pole shift into migration, as we had in the Younger Dryas 13,000 years ago, or the Lechamp 42,000 years ago, and I forget the one that was 26,000 years ago. But it's a cyclic thing every 13,000 years.
Yes, so the poles will shift partially or completely, north and south. So the planet Earth will do like this, right? Whoop, whoop, whoop. Imagine if the planet does that, the Earth does that. Imagine what happens with water. Imagine what happens with the mountains that we have. We're gonna have earthquakes, flood,
Super volcano.
tsunamis, all kind of natural disasters possible on this planet Earth.
Yeah, this time around we're looking at Mount Vergari. They're in Italy as the giant super volcano is the one that will probably go off.
Yeah.
The one in Yellowstone has been releasing pressure long enough that we don't think it's going to explode, based on the scientific. And of course, government, as is always government, is hiding a lot of the data. They've been preparing for this since like the
Mhm.
40s and 50s, when they discovered it and found out, oh, all these prophecies and stories of flood myths and everything else from these ancient indigenous cultures around the world is true.
Yeah, so is the Noah's Ark that is mentioned in the Bible
Yep, those are the mini events every 6,000 years that aren't as big a deal as the main events,
that are coming.
like the Younger Dryas. And you're looking at potentially a mile high tidal wave. That's 5,000 foot high tidal wave just wrapping around the planet. Because what happens is as the poles shift and the sun micronova, it gets the crust to decouple, and the crust is just, like pieces of wood floating in the water that all of a sudden can move freely.
Oof, all that lava is gonna go coming up to the surface, right?
Well, not so much just the lava coming to the surface,
Mhm.
it's it's the continents and that are floating on the surface of the
Oh,
lava.
yes,
So
yes.
like the whole land masses start moving. The
Shifting.
Pangea you hear about is not, 1 billion years or whatever it was for how long ago it was all one continent. It was much more recent. You look at South America fits into Africa, North America fits into Europe, as the, continents shift around.
Yeah.
This time around, it's estimated. This is why Trump wants to buy Greenland.
Yes, when is it gonna happen?
Well, we'll get into that in just a moment. It's coming up. It's coming up. It's getting close. This is why we're
Unfortunately,
prepping.
yes.
This is why the billionaires are building bunkers. Elon is building rockets to go to Mars and digging tunnels, and the government's been digging tunnels underground, looking Switzerland. This is why Hitler didn't attack Switzerland, because they were all in on it and we're working on building the bunkers for this event coming up.
And other countries also building floating cities to prepare for this apocalypse.
Yep, you got Dogen City in
Mhm.
Japan, and you've got the Pangean from Saudi Arabia and a few others that are working to do this. And the advantage to New Atlantis is with the block system, it creates a solid floating structure like a giant ark or a ship.
It's a ship as well.
So those of you that don't understand sailing is if you have, say, a 30-foot ship, you can take a tidal wave head on without anybody at the helm up to 1/3 the length of the ship. So a 30-foot ship can handle a 10-foot wave without any issue.
Yes, so that's with our sailboat. That's what we were faced with those big waves, and we were able to ride the wave as opposed to capsize and go underwater. Well, even if you capsize, it flips. The way sailboat is designed, it goes down, flips with the booms and masts down, and then the flip whoop does this.
Yeah, and we don't want that to happen with the city. No,
we don't want that. But sailboats that way, but the city, of course, not.
The plan is for New Atlantis to be 6 miles in diameter, which means it can handle a 2-mile high tidal wave, and the city's not going to tip over.
Yes.
You'll just be city surfing on a giant tidal wave across the Atlantic or the Pacific.
Yay! Sounds much more fun, right? Than capsizing, going underwater.
So when is this all supposed to happen?
When is it gonna happen, approximately? And I know there's so many other people that finally started openly talking about this upcoming event because everybody were hush, hush, hush. A lot of people knew, a lot of podcasters, a lot of scientists, the governments. Everybody know, not everybody, but a lot of groups, they knew about it. And just now, everybody's finally started talking about it. Well, like for instance, yes. So when is it going to happen?
Before we get into that, because we know you want to know when.
Yes, when.
But have you looked up at the sky lately and noticed how much whiter the sun is? It used to be yellow, but really since the point of the eclipse, it seemed much more white.
Yes. Much more white, and it's just so intense and hot.
That is from the weakening of the Earth's magnetic field.
Yeah.
Greg Braden, as she mentioned, is actually one of the people that's finally starting to admit to it. I'm waiting for Randall Carlson and some other ones to talk about it.
Yes.
You hear about Graham Hancock and the lost civilizations. We all know this is what really happened. They talk about a meteor hitting and causing it, but it's like, no, it was the micronova that pushed the meteors into the planet, and it was the micronova that superheated the temperatures at the poles that caused the polar ice caps to melt in mere days, not decades like they're talking about, which is just the amount of energy for that is just nearly incomprehensible for most people of how much it would take to melt the polar ice caps in just a few days and cause the sea to rise by 300 to 400 feet in a few days.
Yeah. So when approximately?
Well, it's a dynamic, it's approximately a 26,000 year cycle. Like we said, when the original Atlantis sunk 13,000 years ago during the Younger Dryas, we're coming right up onto that timeline now. At the far end of the timeline, Isaac Newton estimated that it was 2060 when it would happen. That's our best case scenario.
Which would be great. It gives a little bit more time to prepare, but it can also happen a little bit sooner, right?
Significantly sooner. Our worst case scenario is it happening by 2030 to 2035, with somewhere around the 2040 to 2045 being the most likely time frame of when this is going to happen.
Wow.
So we don't have much time to build New Atlantis and have the floating cities because there's not enough cave systems for everybody. And the more floating islands we can build, the more likely a larger portion of humanity is going to survive. And, we might not have to go to cannibalism because we can grow fish farms and everything else underneath. And
yeah, because, when this happens, imagine that. A lot of people will drown or go underneath the ground or just die from, lack of oxygen.
Well, not so much lack of oxygen.
Thank you for correcting me, my love. What
But
could be the reasons why
we did
people
have the
will
mega
perish?
And you have the giant tidal waves wiping out
Yes,
the
the
plant
waves.
life and a lot of the animal life. That's why you have, like the megafauna, which is animals more than 100 pounds, which, you and I are considered megafauna, as is your
Mhm.
elephants. And, most of those are wiped out through Europe. There's only a few left here in America for your bears and your wolves. And God, think how cool it'd be to be seeing some of the saber-toothed tigers and those new dire wolves they've just recloned and other things coming back. This is why they're, getting the DNA of all the species so we can reclone and bring things back.
Yeah. So, and I guess what can we do to prepare? Yes, building the floating cities will prepare us. What else can people do?
There's only so much. It's choosing your location. This is why the billionaires are up in the mountains of Montana and western Colorado, not the eastern slopes where it's just sorry. Colorado's has gone downhill. I love the state, but I'm sorry, you wackadoodle left-wing people trying to make it yeah, I'll try and avoid the politic topic on that one.
Yes,
But time frame, you're looking generally between the peak time 2035 to 2045, which is also when you're hitting the singularity of the AI and technology, which is why they're having the robotics to try and replace people as their guards and things like that, because the wealthy know they can't trust the people they mistreat when things really get bad, and they're wondering how they can keep their workers actually behave and keep working for them when the monetary system and everything else dies.
And that's another reason why we're focusing also on New Atlantean Society on tapping into our divinity. So each human being has the divinity inside of them that you you're, if you want to survive, I urge you to tap into your divinity, but that's another video for another day.
Yeah. And a lot of it's, building the community where people can work together.
Yes.
With part of the plans for New Atlantis, I have designs for a combination hydroelectric desalination pump. At the full size for the 6 Mile Island, it can produce enough power for 15 to 25 million homes and enough water for 200 million people per island. So we can make the Sierra Desert green again. And so whatever catastrophes really go, and we have the technology now to where we can drain off some of the magma in the Campy Fergie and reduce the chance of it going to a super volcano. There's so many different things we can do if we get humanity to start working together.
Together, exactly. And we must work together, otherwise we're not gonna survive.
And as we're doing that, you can join us. Visit my site, newatlantisdevelopments.com, and click on the New Atlantean Society. You can join for free to, get around other like-minded people, learn things to tap into your divinity, deepen your connection with Creator, and give us a chance to survive. Because, other than being up in the high mountains of Peru, Tibet, the high parts of the Rockies, which can only hold a small fraction of the population, the areas like Kansas, Texas, Florida are all going to be underwater again.
Or by the shoreline, everything will be underwater.
That's why we mentioned Texas, Canada, or Texas, Kansas, and Florida as places that'll pretty much all be underwater.
California?
California's sinking into the sea, probably sooner than the coming to the next Younger Dryas, but we'll have to wait and see. This is Jedi and Anna.
Signing off. Let's get this build.